thinking the DS is really grumpy, I want the old one back. I got news for you, the old one doesn't want the job back. Well, good. Well, welcome back. I hope that you had productive time in your individual sessions. It's been pretty crazy pace that we've been going at. And our elections processes were challenging in some respects, but we got her done. And so bless you and thank you for your participation there. I have a friend with me. Anybody know who this is? If you do not know this lady, her name is Hayley Tarrant, and I think that we've got another guest with us who's going to pop up on a screen behind us, if I'm not mistaken. There he is!
Oh.
Can you hear us, Andrew?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can indeed, yeah. I was chatting with Hayley and Pastor Earl just ahead of time. I asked her how the Polish lessons were going, and she said that you're taking classes, doing pretty well, and Pastor Earl piped up and said he hasn't even learned to speak Canadian yet.
Touché.
Hey, I want to say thank you to both of you for making yourselves available for us today. Of course, I'm newly back on the district, and you actually moved to the district while I was living in Ontario. So my journey with you is really from afar, but I do get to speak for us. You are ours. And I know it because I get your credentialing certificate on my desk every year to be forwarded to you. And so thank you. Last time, as a district family, we checked in on you. You were in El Paso, Texas, and now you are in, where in Poland?
We're in Poznan.
Poznan. Okay, and that's the proper pronunciation, obviously. I've been seeing Poznan in the news and stuff like that, so it's Poznan.
Well, Andrew says it differently than me. Andrew, how do you say it?
Poznan. Poznan.
Poznan.
Poznan. Poznan.
You know what? You guys can say it however you want, so...
Poznan.
I try to say it like the locals.
Okay.
Poznan.
All right. Well, there you go. So why don't you just start by telling us how you got from El Paso, Texas to Poznan?
Andrew, why don't you go ahead and share about that?
Okay, so we were in El Paso for 4 years, where we were working with the Nazarene Border Initiative and also working with missionary kids in the Church of the Nazarene, high school and college age missionary kids. And during the pandemic, as we were stuck in El Paso, as I'm sure you guys were all stuck at home as well. We heard from Global Mission that the funding for our ministry in El Paso was kind of coming to an end. And so we either needed to transition out of ministry with Global Mission, or maybe something would come around in the hopefully in the not too distant future. That took place in August of 2020. And then within a month, the Sunbergs, who are the field strategy coordinators for the Central Europe field of the Church of the Nazarene, they reached out to us and said, hey, we'd just love to catch up and find out what you're doing and if you have any thoughts. And then gradually over the next couple months in the fall of 2020, they asked us to consider coming to join them in Poland because they were also moving to Poznan from Hungary, where they had been before. And so that's how we got here. We didn't end up coming until actually a year ago today. It's a year ago today that we arrived in Poland.
So you landed on the ground and you had a vision for what you might be doing. It got changed, but tell us what the original vision was.
The original vision was to work alongside the Sunbergs and help reimagine what this old coffee shop could be. So the Church of the Nazarene owns a coffee shop in Poznan. It's called Sweet Surrender. And it's in this old, beautiful old stone, what, Andrew, is it a tenement building or some kind of building?
British people would call it a tenement. I'm not sure what Canadians would call it. The British Canadians would call it a tenement.
Yeah, and they own the apartment on the lower level, and then also a third level apartment. And this property was purchased a long time ago, and it had become a coffee shop ministry. And during the pandemic, it shut down. And then Nazarenes had moved elsewhere. And so the Sundbergs, they saw that, there is these properties in Poznń that aren't being used. Let's get reestablished in Poznń. And so that's when they asked us to come along and help reimagine how this coffee shop space could be used, because it's quite large for European standards. And so it was really exciting because we were kind of working with a blank slate. We could to brainstorm together how to use that space and also establish relationships in the community in Poznń. So we worked from last June until about this past February on building relationships and imagining how to reuse this space. And in February, things changed.
February changed, things changed.
Yeah.
The Russian military was given directions by their overseers to invade the borders of the Ukraine. And what happened then?
I was coming back from Idaho. I'd flown to Idaho because my dad passed away. And it was when I was returning to Poznń that Russia invaded Ukraine. And as soon as I returned to Poznń, the Sundbergs had a meeting with us, and that was when we were like, what are we going to do? How are we going to respond? And that's when the vision was created for this Ukrainian community center, for us to say, okay, let's not focus on this business that we were going to reestablish. Let's focus on using the space for Ukrainian response.
Can you give us some anecdotes, as maybe some of the stories that have unfolded in your care?
Yeah, well, so one story that I always fall back on is because it has to do with one of my favorite people. Her name's Nastya, and she came. Well, this is to say, so Jay and Tiana Sundberg, they had to pretty quickly go to the border. It's called Przemysl, and this is where many Ukrainians are crossing into Poland through Przemysl. And so, since Jay is the field strategy coordinator, he and Tiana needed to go to the border and start to see what the needs were there. And then that meant Andrew and I were in Poznń, I guess coordinating the response in Poznń. And Tiana had said, okay guys, before they left, we have 21 Nazarenes that are expected to be coming this week. So what are we going to do? And these Nazarenes are from the Kazatin Church of the Nazarene in Ukraine. And we debated, are we going to have accommodate them sleeping in Sweet Surrender in the cafe? Or are we going to use the cafe as a community center? And so ultimately we decided community center, but we still welcomed these Nazarenes from Ukraine. And the 21 turned out to be 7. So we learned pretty quickly that things are unpredictable, and you just have to be flexible. And so these 7 were three women and 4 children. And we met them at the train station in Poznń, and this young woman, Nastya, she's 20 years old. She was the English speaker in the group. And she's the one that I had been communicating with on Telegram, this app, Telegram. And as soon as I met her, she had really touched my heart. I just felt this connection with her. And she was very much pivotal in us starting our kids club at our center and meeting the needs of this very first group. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to communicate with them. And so Nastya's group, they stayed in we made a partnership with another NGO, a non-governmental organization, who were set up with beds to host Ukrainians. And so we picked them up from the train station and took them to Barka, this NGO. And then I visited them every day or every couple of days to find out what their needs were and how we could help. And I brought them to Sweet Surrender, to the cafe, And one of the first needs that Nastia had explained to us was a need for children to have activities, and also need for Polish language courses. And so I'd asked also Nazarene Compassionate Ministries, NCM, if we could hire Nastia to give her some income because she was helping me so much. And so they said yes, and she was our first paid staff. And she was my assistant. And I told her, I'm like, Nastia, you're such a leader. And she said, no, I'm not a leader, I'm your tail. And and I said, oh, come on. And she said, no, I like being the tail. I'm a good helper. And it's true. I mean, she's such a good helper. And we ran all sorts of errands together, went to IKEA, bought things for Kids Club together, and decorated the room for Kids Club and assembled IKEA furniture and stuff. So Nastia has moved here to Vancouver, and that's one reason I'm here today. And so she had gotten a Canadian visa. And one day she was talking to me about the fact that she got this Canadian visa, and I immediately thought, how can I get her to Vancouver? How can I get her to Canada? Or how can God get her there? And so I contacted Lori Ward at Vancouver First Church and said, hey, do you guys feel like you could sponsor a Ukrainian young woman, Nazarene? And pretty quickly Lori said, yeah, we can do that. Let me approach the church about it. And the church really opened their arms and have welcomed Nastia here, so yeah.
Good.
That's one story.
Andrew, you got a story for us?
So Hayley has been really carrying the lion's share of the kind of ministry with our Ukrainian community here in Poznan. And I have been mostly focused on things on the domestic front, which actually I love. But one of my favorite parts about that is we actually have an 18-year-old Ukrainian who lives with us. And she is awesome. And what I've loved about connecting with her is that it's brought, you see, even living in Poland, we're next door to Ukraine. And the weeks leading up to the war, we're aware that it's in the country next to us, but it's probably not going to directly impact us, this war. And then, of course, it has impacted us through the people who have come. And what I've loved about connecting with all of the Ukrainians in our community, but especially with this one that lives with us, is that while they are people who are fleeing incredible trauma and danger and violence, so this 18-year-old that lives with us is still a teenager and acts like a teenager and says things like a teenager would say. And yet she's so strong and so brave. And I just love the fact that our kids have fallen in love with her, and she is part of our family now. And so that's one of the main ways that this has impacted my life and my part in it has been. And then on Sundays, we've been gathering every Sunday at Sweet Surrender, which is the name of the coffee shop. And just for sort of like a small group service-y type Bible study thing. So the 6 years that we were in Hope, and the majority of the time that we pastored in Hope, the Hope Church of the Nazarene, our congregation met in our living room. And essentially, these meetings we're having with Ukrainians on a Sunday morning are so uncannily similar to the meetings that we had in Hope. And so I'm so grateful for the opportunities I had ministering in Chilliwack and in Hope to learn how to do what we're doing now in Poznan. So but mostly it has been Hayley who's been doing most of the leadership regarding our team of people working with Ukrainians. A lot of my roles when we came here have sort of slowed down a lot, partly just because of all the other activities happening. But the other main thing I do is I work with NY leaders across the Central Europe field. But that has slowed down dramatically since the start of the war.
You brought some pictures. Why don't we show them, and you guys can provide commentary as it may be helpful. You should be able to see it on your screen, Andrew, I think, and Hayley can climb in too.
Yeah. So one of the ways we responded was by offering Polish classes to Ukrainians. Language is so important. If they're going to be able to get work and get jobs and get established, or even be able to communicate with their landlords or other Polish people, they need to be able to speak the language. And luckily, Ukrainian and Polish are very similar languages. So they aren't having to start completely from nothing, the way Andrew and I have started. They can kind of understand Polish, and so then it makes it so that we can make these classes very much like drop-in. Anybody can come at any point in the classes and learn something. They haven't missed so much because they have already some kind of foundation in the language. And so we ended up hiring 4 teachers, and they each taught 1 or 2 times a week, and the classes are always full. So that's what you see here. This is my friend Agata. She's teaching. She's actually an Italian teacher at a school, a high school, and she said that she'd be willing to teach Polish. So these are Ukrainian women that you see in the picture, and this is all the pictures that you see. It is Sweet Surrender, our cafe. Or our community center that you see in the pictures. And so this is our kids' room, and this was a very full kids club. I think we had 30 children there that day. And the Polish classes on Saturdays, the Polish class and kids club, we intentionally overlapped the two so that parents could go, or when I say parents, it's usually the mothers actually, because men are staying in Ukraine, they have to stay. Unless they're over a certain age or under a certain age. And so the mothers are in Polish, and then the kids come to Kids Club. And I want to emphasize the fact that our center is run by Ukrainians, okay? It's run by Ukrainians who are displaced, and there are several Nazarenes in our staff, and they run the operation, okay? So this is youth club, and the young lady you see on the left front, that's our teenager, our new teenager in our family. Her name's Dasha, and so she's part of youth club. And I met a woman in our community who runs an NGO for youth, and she and I decided to collaborate, and I opened up the center for her to use whenever she wants for youth. And so essentially she's running the youth at the center, and Ukrainian youth that we know, we invite to youth club, and then she also does the same. And we have 3 pillars of our center. So these are all based on the needs that we've heard from Ukrainians. And so the first pillar is soul care. Providing for spiritual needs for mental health. We're going to have an art therapist who's donating her time and supplies starting in July. She'll be coming to our center for art therapy. And then we have community, and community is Sweet Surrender as a coffee shop, which we still hope to open to the public, is key in this community building part. And also our kids club, all of our clubs are key in this community pillar. And then the third pillar is integration, helping people learn the language, helping them get settled in Poznań, helping them feel like they're a part of the community. So youth club is vital, and this is a picture of our kids club happening. And so we have kids club on Saturday. We have a kids master class where they really learn to make something. A kids master class, a kids games club, And then this is another Polish class. And this is my staff. So Dasha, our teenager on the left, she's volunteers. And then Luba is next to her. And Luba is our coffee shop manager. She's a Nazarene, and Dasha's a Nazarene. And then we have Dasha number 2. So Dasha number 2, She's doing the peace sign. She's the barista, Ukrainian barista we hired. Svetlana is in charge of all of our women's ministry. She's our host for our center. And then Sophia, she does a lot of our social media. She's an artist and she's a photographer. So she does, and she's amazing with children. So she's one of our children's volunteers. So that's just part of our staff. We have more people, but that's, and again, me with some of our staff. And this is Sweet Surrender in the background, the outside. And English Cafe. So I teach at English Cafe, and usually we just play a game and discuss a topic, and it's popular, it's fun, it's a lot of fun. And Polish class. And we just hired this Polish teacher. Her name's Gosia. She was my Polish teacher, and she started teaching one of the Polish classes at Sweet Surrender. And then I asked NCM if we could hire her to work for us full-time and to run all of our language programs. So she's running all of our language programs now. So, and this is Sophia with the kids. Yeah. And this is Tea Club. So Svetlana, she's ministering to the women, and she is very gifted at making the women feel special. And so, you know, she and my staff, our staff, they just use what they have in Sweet Surrender and make it beautiful. So, I think that's all.
That's it? Good. I'm going to give you really quickly maybe 1 or 2 or 3 questions at the most who you may have for Andrew and Hayley. Anyone? Come on. There we are. Oh, sorry. She put her hand up, which is more polite.
Hi, welcome home.
Hi, it feels like coming home. It really does. Yeah.
One question. How
Yeah.
can we effectively pray for you? Top 3.
Well, you could pray for our strength and some endurance. You could pray for mental health of all of the people that we work with. And Andrew, do you want to add in another prayer request?
Sure. Pray for these individual Ukrainians, their decisions they're making, especially these young ones who, some of them were in the middle of university studies. They're trying to decide, a lot of Ukrainians have headed back to Ukraine, even though it's not completely peaceful. So what should they do next? Should they continue their studies? Should they find university opportunities in Poland or elsewhere? It's unthinkable for us to imagine what it would be like to be thrust into these difficult decisions. But each one of them has their own story and is trying to figure out how much they just need to stay in Poznan and work with Sweet Surrender, or if they should be doing something else, and help us, and that we would be able to give them the space and support as they make those decisions.
I just wanted to know how the Polish Nazarene churches are helping you in your ministry.
Andrew, you want to answer this? How are the Polish Nazarene churches helping us in our ministry?
Yeah, so there really only are two other churches of the Nazarene in Poland. One is in Warsaw and one is in Krakow. And the one in Warsaw is doing a lot. Their pastor is a Syrian immigrant to Poland. He actually came to Poland as a refugee himself during the war in Syria. And him and his mother, they both go back and forth between Warsaw and Przemysl, the town that Hayley mentioned before that's on the border. And they have set up a kind of ministry center, a safe place for volunteers who are working at the border, receiving new refugees, but also working especially with mothers and young children, giving them a little bit, a fraction of respite before they continue on their journey. And the Warsaw Church is playing a big part in that. And most of that church is made up of former refugees or immigrants from mostly the Middle East to Poland. And then the Krakow Church have hosted some people in their building as well. And then our church is basically just small and is made up of Ukrainians who have come since the conflict started. And of course, they're all very involved in what we're doing in Poznan.
I was wondering how your children are doing.
Well, Andrew, how are our children doing?
They're well. Emily's asleep. Reese should be asleep, but just tried to get in here, and we'll be asleep soon. And Samuel and Reese, they just finished their first year of school in Poland just yesterday. Reese just finished kindergarten, and Samuel just finished grade 4. And their life has changed significantly since the start of the war. Their mother has been out of the house a lot more, and we're not resentful about that. It's just been part of this ministry sacrifice we're making as a family. They have a Ukrainian sister who lives with them now, who they love, and that's a big change in their lives. They're now not just surrounded by people speaking Polish; they also hear a lot of Ukrainian and Russian. But yeah, the kids they're thriving as they would, and they have the same struggles, I'm sure, as they would have anywhere. I think they're doing well. But yeah, the boys are especially excited about the fact that we have now 2 months of no school. So I think they're doing okay.
Thank you for asking.
Thanks. I know it's getting close to your bedtime, Andrew, but I was going to ask you how Scotland did this year, but should I ask that?
It's no different than most of my life. They lost to Ukraine in the playoff to get into the World Cup, which was fine, except Ukraine then went on to the next round and lost to Wales. So our losing to Ukraine, even if we did it on purpose, was a total waste because they couldn't beat Wales.
Yeah. Well, you know, of course, that your other homeland has qualified for the World Cup, so we know where your allegiance is going to be.
Oh, I don't only know, I was watching live.
Good.
And also was watching Alphonso Davies' live stream when he was watching them qualify as well.
Yeah, no,
So
that was fun,
exciting.
wasn't it?
And of course,
Absolutely. But
we'll
we
be cheering
digress.
them on, and Poland. Poland also qualified, and so did Mexico, who are almost home when we were in El Paso. It will be a good World Cup.
Okay, good. Hey, last comments from you guys. Haley, you were just about to say something.
Well, I wanted to let you know, if you guys want to partner with us, there's various different ways you can do that. Just please reach out to me. Andrew and I talked about this, that we don't have prayer cards. Most missionaries come with prayer cards, to give you, and I didn't have time. So I don't have prayer cards to give you guys, but if you can remember our website, it's tarrantfamily.com. So TARRANT, family.com. And there are ways to partner, either financial partnerships, prayer partnerships, coming to Poznan to help partnerships, all sorts of things. So
Good.
We're looking for partners.
Good. Andrew, last word?
Sounds good. I miss you, Haley. Thanks for what you're doing.
I miss you
Love
too.
you guys. Miss you all. And everyone who's there. I love you all also. Thank you.
We're just gonna take. Before you log off, Andrew, I want to pray for you. Father, we're thrilled and we laugh, but the context is just so awful. And we do recognize and want to be reminded constantly that these are young people. These are people who have had dreams dashed, and who have in such a difficult place making decisions for where to go to while their country is still upside down. And so we pray for those persons who you, by your providence, will lead into the ministry of Hayley and Andrew. Pray, God, that your prevenient grace, which we have already explored these days, will guide them safely. And I pray, Lord, though, for Andrew and Hayley and for their family and for the reach of the whole ministry there, that your grace will abound in their imaginations because we know it abounds in fact. And give them the eyes to recognize where you would lead and where you would empower them, and where you would strengthen them when they have no strength left. So, Lord God, now we commit them to you because we know that in your hands is the very best place for them. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, I think this one ran out of battery, but Del Marie, we love you. That's all I'm going to give you for an introduction. Come on and tell us what you're doing.
I'm so excited. Hayley, where are you? Thank you. You know what? She's my hero. She's there. She's seen people that we are trying to help from the side. Isn't God good? He's given us someone over there to be our hands and feet, literally, and we just get to come alongside. Oh, how good God is. He's working this end and he's working the other. Oh, how I love how God works. Isn't it wonderful? We're going to get going because I've been waiting so long. It's been so long. Do you see I'm blessed? I am so blessed to tell you what you have been doing in spite of COVID. I'm so excited, but you'd never know who I am, are you? You know what? I have to tell you. Oh, I'll carry on. Next. All right. February, I forgot. Change that. There you are. It takes me. Okay, next. We're going to go. Just so you know, we still have a warehouse in Esquimalt, and I'm just going to go next. We still have a warehouse at the farm, and this is where we load from now. Next, I'm going to do this really fast. Just before COVID, God was so good. Literally. 1 week before COVID stopped, we were able to send our 500th container. And God, I know, think about it, isn't it great? And God allowed us to have a party, and we had a party over 2 days, and it was so exciting. I'm so glad God led us to do this. So next. And then we got, that one went to Jordan, medical clinic for all the refugees. You're going to start hearing of a couple of words. Next. Bike trip for pastors who are Syrian refugees that came into Jordan and were not allowed outside their city, but somehow when bikes came, they were given permission to go out for a day trip. And they had a worship service, praying that the Lord would open doors for them. Next. Mosaic, all the people who have been hurt, we were able to, I got to learn a whole pile of things about skill development centers that I didn't know anything about. And we set up a Mosaic. Isn't that wonderful? They are now self-sufficient. Next. That's what we're starting to learn. We had to learn and regroup because we would used to load and have a mess of people coming in and out, and it was just wild and it was fun and I loved every second. And then COVID hit. And we had to go down to 7 people only. 2 people in the container at a time. And we were used to having like a mess of people. It was a party. Well, we started loading by pallets. So there you are. I want you to know on the left. Can you tell me what's in there? Quick. That's bikes. You got it, Artie. On the left, what's that one? You could tell. Come on. Wheelchairs, you got it. Next. Isn't it great? There we are. See, there's even Arnie. We started doing crates, more and more crates. And the Lord gave us an electric forklift before we even knew we needed it. A truck came up to the door and said, Dell, here's a delivery for you. And I said, what's that? And they said, come out and look. It was a forklift. I didn't even know we needed a forklift, but God knew we needed a forklift because the next week we had to use it. Isn't God good? I know. Next. That one, I have to tell you because some of you gave us things. You stopped and you talked to your sports people, and we went to Belarus for Youth for Christ. One of the things they wanted was hockey equipment. Do you remember that? How many of you sent me hockey jerseys from everywhere? We have Tim Hortons, we have Calgary Flames, we had Edmonton Oilers, we have all the ones from all the way across Canada, and it made it into Belarus just before the Civil War. And God has opened doors for Christians in a very unstable area using hockey. Isn't God good? He's so creative. Next. There you are. You can't read it, but I'll send you the stats just to show you. And next. See, that's just some. We have to rebrand names of hockey in Canada now because we can't use some of the same names. But it's really great because they all pre-ordered because they have to. And so when they had to rebrand, we got all these truckloads of brand new hockey jerseys with old names on them. And you name it, the whole gear, everything. There is so much fun over there. Anyways, that's just exciting. I told you 2 years ago, you all helped me for the Ferris Clinic in Côte d'Ivoire, inner city clinic. Our general superintendent, Carla Sundberg, was there. She visited and she said, we got to do something about this. And I was there a few years way back. And we did a container very, very shortly. They wanted the whole clinic revamped. They wanted their ministry center set up. And they wanted their school set up. Next. Next, maybe. So that was the back of the container. Look at the date. December 2019. Next. It arrived in May of 2021. No, the back of the container, sorry. It arrived in the 20. It sat on the dock in West Africa for 1 full year. I don't know about you, but West Africa is not northern BC. It's hot. And they kept changing rules and wanting one more piece of paper and one more permit and one more and a little bit of baclashish and all this stuff. And they just kept going and going back. And finally, 1 year to the date that it arrived, they were able to unload it. Next. There's the container in front of the clinic. Next. There's school books in there. All the education supplies. Next. They were delivering all by cars. Next. Pastors' retreats, pastors' wives. Next. Pastors' bikes. They can now go visit their congregations because things are very expensive there. Next. More bikes for pastors. This gentleman said, I can now reach 2 other villages because God gave me a bike. God answered my prayer. Think about it, how God used a bike from Victoria or somewhere to answer a prayer request overseas. And I just get excited. Next. More pastors' bikes. See, I just love it. Next. Gifts for pastors. We had a team, our seniors group made gifts for pastors' wives, and they all got a gift. And they had never had a gift before from the pastors' wives. Isn't that neat how you can sneak in little treats and it doesn't really matter? Next. There they are, waiting their turn. Aren't they beautiful? Next. We were able to get graduating gowns. Brand new. We sent them over. I remember I walked through the warehouse and I said, Lord, there's something missing. There's something missing in this load. And I walked through the warehouse and I kept walking through the warehouse and then I finally all of a sudden went down into one area and I thought, graduating gowns, I haven't got a clue why I wanted to do graduating gowns. And we put on 3 boxes of graduating gowns. This is the first class in West Africa that has ever worn graduating gowns. Isn't that amazing? The seminary, he said to me, he says, it's been my dream and my goal that my people will be the same as the rest of Africa and actually have graduating gowns. Did we know this? No, but God did and somehow sent it early, and there they are. Aren't they beautiful? I just get so excited. Next. Beds and equipment for the clinic. Next. There they are saying thank you to us in Canada and NCM. Next. There you are. See? NCM Canada sent it. It was so wonderful. Next. I want you to know nothing was wasted. Nothing was broken after 1 year. Nothing was melted. Absolutely everything was perfect. They went through, and it was the prayer request of the NCM director who kept saying, Lord, in all of this, make sure your name is glorified. And it was nothing was broken after a year on the dock. And crayons melt. Just thought I'd tell you. And you know what? The government has asked for forgiveness and offered an apology and returned their finances, and they said, we're sorry. Isn't that amazing? And the church has a wonderful ministry in areas they didn't know they had before, but God opened new doors through all the trial. Next. Lebanon, some of you have heard this one, but some of you haven't. It's so exciting. Next. We loaded a container at Esquimalt. There it is. Next. The back of the load on August 8th, 2019. I want you to look at that date. Next. Then August 4th, 2020, it was still at the port. They had asked for $40,000 US to clear it. It costs $2,000 normally, and they asked for $40,000, and they said, no way. And they were trying to negotiate, and then August 4th happened. And the port blew up. Some of us are just a little bit stubborn, because that's what donkeys are. We're a little bit persistent. And I changed my prayer request to Lord, and there was a group of us who vowed together and committed ourselves together that, Lord, if you want to destroy the container, then you provide for your people in unexpected ways, because these are your people who are asking for your help, and it's your name that is on display, not mine. Pretty radical, eh? I figured if God could resurrect the Lord, he could resurrect a container. Next. There's the port. Next. They unearthed the container 1 year later. In the middle of that mess, they were digging and carting off truckloads of garbage. And in the middle of that mess, they found next, on the 5th, they unearthed the container. The only thing that's a little different is a little bit more rusty on one side, because I've examined every side of the container. I have. Next. There it is. They're the welcoming children from one refugee camp. Next. There it is, being delivered down the road. The lady who's in charge of the Jordan and Syrian refugees marching down, praising the Lord, singing praises to the Lord, just like David did as he marched down the road praising the Lord. Izdahar was praising the Lord. Next. There's the container, unloading it on site. Do you see this big steel box? You can't kind of put that in Photoshop. That's the real thing. Next. They put the signs that the kids had made on it. Next. Our God. Our God is great. Isn't it wonderful? They didn't say, thank you, Dell. They said, thank you, God, because all the glory goes to God. It is such a miracle story. Next. Nothing, and we thought everything was lost, but in spite of it, God was working behind the scenes, and it keeps reminding me. He's expanded their ministry into a brand new area, bigger site, more opportunity, water, roads. God expanded their ministry when they didn't know it was being expanded. And 10 days ago, they dedicated the brand new site with a hairdressing unit, a skill development center, a sewing center, a church, a school, a preschool, an elementary school, and a women's empowerment center, all for not Ukrainian refugees, for Syrian refugees. To God be the glory. When we think God isn't doing anything, he's still busy. Next. God's not finished writing the story. Next. Ethiopia, I have to share this one really fast. Next. We're able to send food out into the wilds of Ethiopia. And this is into areas that are creative access. That's all I'm going to say. We sent a container, and we sent a container of food. And I want you to know, next. Oh, let's go back one. We sent one container of food, and they kept giving the food out and giving the food out. And there was only supposed to be 960 boxes of food in that container. But did you know that container kept going and delivering food for an entire year until the day the next food container arrived? A real life, it was amazing. I have the records. I have everybody who signed for it. They don't add up. Talk about a crazy farmer. Isn't it great? Next. We sent up some skill development centers, and they're teaching them how to sew. Next. Zimbabwe, we were able to, I'm just going to go through really quick. Next. Again, we started feeding people with Gleaner's food. Next. Wheelchairs and people picking up those from the garbage dump. In Zimbabwe, there's a ministry there. Next. They started a tiny house project picking up people who live in the downtown east side of rural life and putting them in new homes. Next. We set up the whole homes. We collected everything to set up all the homes as part of the project. Next. Mums off the street. Mums who've been thrown out because their children fell in the fire and they're totally burnt, and so they're useless. They're useless in their world. And they're not valued. But this group values them. And they're now living in a home that is worth like a queen would live in their area. Isn't God good? Next. They went from this, next, to this. Wouldn't that be something? Taking somebody? As they said, they literally picked up a man from a house. They gave him a bath that he hadn't had for years. They dressed him in new clothes, and they took him into a house, and the poor man was absolutely in shock. How good God was to do this. Next. There's the school. I know I got to keep going. Next. I'm sorry, people. You've given so much of this. Do you take a look? It could be yours. It could be yours. Next. Feeding people, giving joy, kids clubs, adult clubs. Next. Sewing centers, sewing supplies, school supplies. You have sent it all. Next. Isn't that a beautiful picture? Isn't she gorgeous? Tajikistan, we were able to send in to an area for Afghan refugees. Next. Feeding people. We sent a container, and we had to have 8 different permits to go through 8 different countries, and then the shipping company sent it through 8 different countries that we didn't have a permit for. God has a sense of humor. And he's teaching Dell to trust in the midst of where is it, and I haven't got a clue, and I don't know where it is, and is it going to make it, and I don't know. And God is teaching Dell how to trust in spite of. And I still have some lessons to learn. But God is feeding people on the margins, way out. The government decided that every person who received something must have their name written down, ID, and they had to be monitored. But God's working just the same as he did with Paul. When Paul was talking and writing his letters, he's talking to his guards. Well, this group of people who are wonderful people and believers in the Lord Jesus Christ were witnessing as they were going along delivering to all these people that the Lord was sending them to monitor. So while they're monitoring, they're getting the love of Jesus torn on them. Isn't it kind of cool? I know, next. There's some wonderful, I have to be very careful what I say. Pray for these men. Pray for these men. Next. I have to tell you the story of this little lady. She's 84. She walked over the mountains, literally the mountains, with her 3 grandchildren, because everyone else was killed in their family. She lives out in a very, very rural area. Somebody gave her a little hut to live in. And they gave everybody the same amount of food and clothes and bedding. And as she grabbed the bag, she said, "Thank you, but is there any chance you have food in that bag?" And she went down, they said, "Check the bottom," because they were just loading up bags, and they pulled one, and in the bottom was a bag of Gleaner's food. She pulled it out. Isn't that a beautiful smile? But her next posture was to get down on her knees and say, "Thank you, Jesus, for answering my prayer. I have been praying for food because I can't work, but my grandchildren need to eat. And I have been asking my Father and claiming as a child of God that He will provide food. And in the bottom of this bag was Gleaner's food from BC. Only God could put that together. Isn't that wonderful? He hears their requests and answers them. Next. Just gentlemen loading wheelchairs into people who've been hurt by the war. Next. Aren't they sweet? Aren't those eyes absolutely amazing? Next. And then I had my world organized, and then Ukraine happened. Next. And we were all impacted. And within 2 days of the wars started, they said, "Would you do something?" And our only response is, "Whatever you want us to do, Lord." And I can tell you, we were in for a bit of a ride. The media got involved, the TV got involved, everybody got involved, and we could not keep up with phone calls or donations, and we're still having trouble. God's good. Next. We've been able to send 6 containers so far to the Ukraine. 3 containers of food and 3 containers that will be turned into clinics and mobile units with everything in there. The building supplies are in there. All the equipment for all the clinics are in there. All the equipment for school, trauma counseling, just regular assistance. And you all helped. Did you know people were delivering from this district, from our family, within a week? Stuff started to come from the mainland and down the island from you. Think about it. You responded to a need, and you sent. Living Hope sent all their stuff, and then they have to make more. I think God's good. Next. There's a Gleaner's load. I have to tell you, we got an opportunity to send a Gleaner's load that got stuck on the rail on the way to Montreal, and it was already loaded for Ukraine, but it couldn't go through Odessa because the port's closed. So they just said, "Dell, can you help?" And did you know within 24 hours we had the consignee, we had the import permit, and it got moved from the rail to the port. Now that's only a God thing, because I've been waiting 6 months for something else. But God did it in 24 hours. Next. They do distribution. I have to tell you about the Corridor Hope. Our containers go inside the Poland goes into a Warsaw warehouse, and from there it gets distributed by many, many ways, but not by truckload. It gets distributed by car, maybe a van, maybe the train, maybe by backpack. Next. There's some trucks unloading into a van that's going to go into one area inside the Ukraine. Next. They get to track borders. This is a war zone. All these deliveries that are going inside the Ukraine into one area, and then from that area they get taken into another area, and then from that area they get taken into another area. And we have amazing Christian brothers and sisters that take in things by backpack. I can tell you that some of these people will never come home. We'll see them in heaven. There's many lives that have been lost, but they keep going because there's a need. And they have delivered things by car. Next. We have delivered into shelters. Next. And they have an opportunity to choose what they want. Aren't they just sweet? Next. They've had deliveries in parks. Next. New moms. Our maternity packs have been in bunkers. They've been in clinics. They've been homes. They've been used on the railway train. They've been used in a car. Some of your onesies, some of your blankets, some of your hats. You won't know the story, but God knows where they went. And God has been using those all over. Going into private homes, church basements. Next. Aren't they sweet? Little sweethearts. Next. God's not finished writing the story. God's not done yet. Isn't that cool? God's not done yet. Next. I want you to know, I'm so excited. You didn't see me last night. Our container arrived yesterday for them, one of them to be unloaded yesterday. And Living Hope, where's Living Hope? That's your container with your first load. Not this load, that one. It's on that container. Your blankets are on that one. Think about it. Isn't that amazing? That's your picture. I don't know where they're going, but I know your stuff is on there. And your dishes are on there. There's some Lego on there for kid centers. There's some drawing stuff. There is blankets on there. There's school supplies on there. There's medical supplies on there. There's building supplies on there. Oh, there's so many good things. As you can see there, it's a little space now after the load. I have to get after our guys. There's a little space at the top there. Arnie, you need to buck that up a bit. You see in the left-hand corner? Next. God is a gracious, crazy farmer. If you read the verses before this, God is giving us so much. We have to keep giving it away. Not for us, but for His glory. So when they receive it, they bend down and they bow and they say, thank you, Jesus. And they open doors for ministry wherever in the world. Next. What are we doing? We're just reaching out and being the hands and feet of Jesus. So thank you for your hands. Thank you for your feet. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for caring and reaching out. You are part of the journey of both ends. We're not the need. We are needy, but we're not some of this need. And we're not maybe the recipients, but we're part of the journey. So thank you. Next. My motto has become, Lord, your will, your way, your time, your glory. It's not about us. It's your will, your time, your glory. What did I just say? Your will, your way. I forgot the way there. Your will, your way, your time, your glory. You're going to say it with me. Your will, your way, your time, your glory. Run your life like that. It's God's will. Done His way, in His time, and He gets the glory. And we, there you go. Oh, can I hire you? Oh, my word. Oh, thank you, thank you. All right, that is your motto. As you leave this place later today, that's your motto. Remember that. Your will, your way, your time, your glory. It's not about us, but we get to be part of it. So thank you for joining me.
Dell, you're a great example of a crazy farmer. That food container that the food just kept rolling for a year, we were in the back wondering if there might be green grass underneath that container as well. So, yeah. Well, you have all been amazing. There's something that I want you to just reflect on right now, and that is, since we arrived on Thursday evening and all day yesterday and now this morning, constantly, all around you, there has been a number of teenagers who have been serving you and serving you and serving you. And they have just been working away doing it. And so before you leave this place, when you see one of them, please express your genuine gratitude for the work that they have done for us through this time. Do you know what? That's a great idea, Matt. Can you leave a tip? Is there a place where these guys can leave a tip? And I assume we'll just put that into the funds that are going to support them for their trip to NYC. You want to give some? Okay. Can you put a box out somewhere for that? Where is it going to be? Perfect. Great. Thanks. Good suggestion, Barb. Well, we are keeping a good pace, and we got to keep rolling. Here's the deal. It's lunchtime. And it is not going to be an opportunity to kick back and just have sort of like siesta / slowly eating. You get a box lunch, and you have about a half hour to eat. And then we're going to let our focus turn to the emphasis of NYI, and they have invited us to participate in an event that they do almost on a monthly basis that they call Proclaim, where they invite youth groups from across the district to contribute, whether it's musicians or teaching or whatever. It's one of the ways, especially during the restrictions of COVID, that we were able to keep our youth groups connected from top to bottom and east to west. And they've invited us to be part of that. And you know what I just said about the way that these young people have served so selflessly? I know a lot of you can be tempted to sort of pack it in now and say, okay, I'm done. But I think it would be wonderful if as many as could possibly do it stay and let your presence demonstrate your commitment to the youth of our district. All right? Let me pray, and then you're dismissed to go find your lunch. Father, you have given to us these relationships that we so cherished together. And together, we've had a wonderful time. We've had a wonderful time, particularly because we have been caused to think about how it is, in fact, you do more than we can ask, think, or even imagine. We celebrate you and your grace in its abundance and our privilege to be part of the building of your kingdom. We thank you for the food that has been provided for us. In Jesus' name, amen.